Most people think their reactions start in the moment, or they start to wonder whether maybe they're just an angry person, or maybe deeper than that, they're starting to worry that they've become somebody they no longer recognize. But in most cases, that's not true. There's a hidden loop in the patterns of behavior that cause us to keep reacting. And once you see that loop clearly, you can't unsee it. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact loop that keeps our reactions happening and stops us from staying calm, why it won't ever stop until you see it clearly, and one true, real, small step you can take to break out of that loop. Let's get into it. So what we have here is the shame loop. And it's something that I've been working on myself and developing for the last few years, based entirely on my own experiences, by the way. And if we take a look at it, right, straight away, what you can see is it's not just a straightforward start to end. It's a loop and it keeps repeating. So we start with the reaction, or that's what most people think we start. But we'll start there. We'll start with the reaction, okay? And the reaction in most cases is the most visible part of this. It's the part we see, it's the part everybody else sees as well. So most people, when they react, there's a sharp tone, it feels instant, your chest is really tight. You might be shouting or just saying things that you wouldn't normally say if you were calm. And normally in those moments, you might be feeling really angry. You might be feeling overwhelmed, you know, like you've been holding too much in for too long, which is normal, by the way. And what happens in that reaction is you can't hold it in anymore. But there's a moment when we react, and it's subtle and it's faint, and most people miss this bit. But there's a moment where you can feel your body losing its control. That tiny flicker of time where you go from being able to hold it in to not being able to hold it in. And that moment is the moment most of us trace it back to. That's why I reacted. I couldn't hold it in. The situation, the argument, whatever it was, took too much out of me. I wasn't able to keep it together. And if you are thinking like that, I want to ask you a quick question. And you can comment your answer below if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But let me ask you this anyway. If somebody you cared about was doing what you did and held in what you hold in, right? The things you want to say, the things you don't want to have an argument about, all the pressure, the stress, the responsibilities in your life. If somebody else you care about or someone you love was doing all of that and holding all of that, and they reacted angrily to something, would you blame them the same way? Now, going back to the loop, the next step on there, the next part of this loop is isolation, right? We cut ourselves off from people, especially like just after we've reacted, we walk away, and we're normally like we're in a room on our own, or we're sat in the car, or we're just by ourselves so we can process what's happened and try and work out like what went wrong. And in most cases, it looks like can't do it being around other people. You don't think other people want to be around you. And 9 times out of 10, nobody said that to you, but you pre-assume that that's the case. You're trying to calm down afterwards, and in my own experience, that never really worked because you were still too wound up, you know, from what had just happened before. You're trying to work out how to fix whatever it is that's just happened, make it all better again. Again, it's not an easy thing to do, because if you've just said something to somebody or you've upset somebody, just going back in and saying sorry sometimes isn't enough, right? And we all know that. Sometimes sorry doesn't cover it up. So you start thinking of the way to fix it properly. But in all honesty, the moment has happened. It's been and gone. So the next thing you do, because obviously you're needing time for yourself, is you're trying to work out how to stop it next time. And in that moment, you can feel things like you can be upset with yourself, or maybe with the other person or the situation that caused you to snap. You might be feeling remorseful, like you're feeling really sorry for what you've done, but you don't know how to say that. And actually, we talk about feeling upset, right? I want to touch on something in a minute. that I don't hear a lot of other people say that make this sort of content. When you are upset because you've just snapped at somebody or you've upset somebody else and you feel upset about that, how many people, just by, show of hands in the comments, how many people think they are allowed to be upset about that? Right? Because you've just upset somebody else, okay? And for me personally, when I would upset someone, I would have a moment like that and I would react. It would feel like I wasn't allowed to feel upset about that myself, right? Even though what had happened had upset me too, right? I didn't want to react like that. I felt bad about it, but what are you supposed to do with it then? Well, what happens next in most cases is the next step on the loop. Self-blame. We blame ourselves, right? And it's a really interesting one from a few different ways of looking at it with the blame side of things, because a lot of us growing up knew a simple system. And I'm not trying to upset anybody. I'm just saying this is what I saw a lot of happening, not just for me, but for the people I grew up around. A lot of people who were raised around the same time as me in sort of the late 80s, early 90s, saw this pattern a lot. Something would happen. Yeah, there'd be a problem of some kind. Someone would upset somebody, or something might, there might be an accident, something gets broken in the house or at school. And the next step is to blame somebody. And then once somebody's been blamed and a consequence has been given, we draw a line under it and we all move on. And if your brain, and if you were taught that at a young age, find someone to blame, give a consequence, move on. Now, inside of this loop, you will try and do that again. You reacted, you shouldn't have done it, you blame yourself, you beat yourself up, that's your consequence, you move on. But that's not how it works in this loop. And the further we go through this loop, you'll be able to see it properly, because once we've been through the loop properly and we get to that next step, it will seem a lot clearer, hopefully, the loop itself. And once you see the loop, like I said before, you can't unsee it. It's like the Matrix, you can't unsee it once you've seen it properly. So stick with us for that. But going back to the blame side of things, okay? Your brain tries to deal with what happened. Like I said, tries to make sense of it, rationalize it, blame somebody, and 9 times out of 10, it will blame you. And then you have thoughts like, you should have handled that better. You know better than that. I wouldn't put up with this if I was them, is one that I had a lot when I was in that state myself a lot of the time. And here's another one. This shouldn't be that hard. Staying calm shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't feel as hard as it is. Does anybody else feel like that? Does anybody else have that feeling where they think staying calm should not be as difficult as this? I feel like I'm that close to losing my temper all the time, but other people make it look easy. 2 very quick things. This loop is why it feels hard in the first place. Because this isn't like you get back to the reaction at the top of the page and you just reset again. Every time you go around this loop, it gets harder. Because you react once, you're only upset about one thing, one reaction. You're still holding in all the other stuff, like things you don't want to say because you don't want an argument or you don't want to upset somebody. But on top of that, there's only one reaction. But then you react 5 times, and 10 times, and 20 times, and 50 times, and all of that. You're carrying all of that and all the other stuff that you don't say and don't admit to or don't want people to know about. That's a lot of stuff to put on one person. That's why it feels hard. Obviously, you're going to feel guilty, You're going to feel like maybe you shouldn't have done what you did. Hopelessness is a really big one here. Certainly I went through a long stage of that when I was in this state myself and I was inside of this loop. Because you feel like you're doing all the right things. And more importantly than that, you feel like you're doing it all for the right reasons. And it doesn't matter how hard you try or how much you want it to work, it isn't working. And you feel like you're giving it everything you have. And in most cases you are. This whole loop doesn't say you're not trying hard enough. At no point are you going to hear me say you should be doing better than this, because that's not what it is. That's not what this video is about, okay? But then there are going to be days where your mood just stays low. Like constantly, all the way through the day. Doesn't matter if it's a good day, bad day, indifferent day, your mood stays low regardless. Now, can anybody else see everything adding up yet at all? Like in terms of how much weight you're putting on yourself. Is anybody else starting to see it yet? If you are, let me know in the comments how far into the video, what section did we get to in the loop before you started to see the weight you were carrying properly. Let me know. But let's move on now to the next part of the loop, because this is one of the most difficult parts of it all. And it doesn't sound like it on the outside, but it's pressure, right? Pressure is not that much of a scary word. But when you're putting pressure on yourself all the time, when you're constantly demanding better of yourself, or you're trying to stay calm all the time, you feel like if you lose your temper, you snap at your kids, or you snap at your partner, or you snap at your parents, or you snap at work, wherever it might be, that you've let yourself down. You've let other people down, whatever it might be. And that's an unreasonable thing to expect, by the way, staying calm all the time. Because I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't think what you think, but I do believe it's unrealistic to expect, not just yourself, but anybody at all, to stay calm all the time. I've been working on stuff like this now for the last few years. And working on this stuff has given me the chance to see the different behaviors that we're talking about right now. Not just in myself and the people that I'm closest to, but in lots of people out there. You know, that even people in the streets, people in previous jobs, whatever it might be. There's a reason I took the time to sit down and write this, is because I see it a lot. I see it in more people than I think I ever expected to. But when you're feeling that pressure, here's what it feels like, okay? If you haven't already got there yet, or if it's not too bad for you, if you're early in the loop, this is where you can get to, all right? So just be aware of that. You can get to the stage where you feel like people won't keep putting up with this. That's a huge one. That's probably the biggest fear factor of the lot. That you're trying your best and you're doing everything you can and you're trying to do the right thing. But because you keep snapping and you keep reacting angrily to things, there's going to come a day when the people you care about the most, the ones you're trying to hold it all in for, they're not there. They're not there because they don't want to put up with somebody who reacts angrily so much. That's the biggest fear. That is what really keeps the pressure going. If pressure is a vehicle, that fear is the engine. But then you get onto other thoughts, and they're much more direct about yourself, like you are the one that needs to change. Just very quickly in the comments, just type yes. If you've had that thought, you are the one that needs to change, just type yes in the comments. Because it'd be interesting to know how far along a lot of you are with this, okay? They deserve better than this. Again, we're falling back into that fear. That the people you care about deserve better than what you're giving them. And more often than not, if you're anything like most people I've seen, anything like myself, you're doing everything every day for those people. Everything you can. Every minute you can give to them, you're giving to them. And then you react badly and suddenly you think they deserve better than that. Doesn't seem fair, does it? You hold in what you're thinking and what happens around you. But now it's more intense. Because you just reacted earlier on, now there's this kind of weird state, isn't there, where it's like, I definitely can't say what I want now, even if it's not that bad, even if it's just like, no, I don't really want to watch that TV program tonight. I'd rather watch a film, or you know what, I don't really want pasta tonight. I'd rather like go and have a takeaway. You can't. You don't feel like you can say any of that now because you're worried they're still upset with you. Or, you know, maybe they are. Maybe they're not shy about telling you. Maybe they are still upset with you. And then you feel like you can't say that either. So you're keeping more to yourself than you were before, cutting yourself off because you reacted last time. But the more you cut yourself off and the more pressure you put on yourself, the less people you have to talk to about it and the less places it has to kind of vent out anywhere. It feels harder than last time to stay calm. If you know that feeling, first of all, you're not alone with it. Anybody who recognizes this loop and is seeing themselves in it knows that feeling. It's harder to stay calm than it used to be. And people think like they're the one changing. This is one of the things I keep hearing when I see it out and about. People will say like, you know, I never used to be like this. I never used to be like this. I used to be happier. I used to be calmer. They don't say things like I used to care less, or I used to feel less, but I used to be calmer. I used to be different. I used to be happier, is what I hear sometimes. I didn't used to be an angry person. These are beliefs. You've managed to believe, and it's not a fault for believing these things, but they're not always entirely fair. You've managed to convince yourself when you now believe that you are an angry person, that you have changed, that you're not the person you used to be before you fell into this loop. And when that happens, like I say, you're lonely because you're cutting other people off. You don't want to tell anybody any of this. One of the other reasons we do that is because if you start talking about all of this, when and how do you stop? It's a fair question. When and how do you stop? Once you start talking, sometimes it feels like you're just going to react anyway. You're just going to snap and explode and let it all out. And the worry with that is, if that person gets upset, not only have you upset them, but you've taken all of it out on them. And we don't want to do that. That feeling creates stress. Simple as that. That feeling, that pressure creates stress. And stress is one of the things that it almost like glues all of this together, right? You can have fear and you can have blame, but stress, pressure, it's the sort of cement between the bricks with this. The cement holds the bricks in place. The pressure to do better next time is what keeps you coming back into the loop. You have other motivators like the fear, like I said, of people you care about, not as much giving up on you, but not being there next time. That's a big motivator. And it's a big reason for some of this. But feeling stressed, feeling the pressure is the glue that binds it all. And like I say, you feel nervous because you think, oh, I don't want to say that because they might still be upset with me from the other day, or actually if I say this to them and they get upset with me, do they expect me to be calm if they get upset? Like, because then it's fair game, you know what? And if I react to that, and so you start second guessing everything before you even said it. In some cases, for me, before I was even in the room with them. And then, because we don't want to stay stuck like that, we go on to the fifth part of this loop. Trying again. We try again, right? We pick ourselves up and we go again, because there isn't another way, is there? We can't just give up. If we give up, we are definitely going to lose everything, aren't we? That's what we tell ourselves. So we try again and we say things to ourselves like, I'm going to stay calm this time. If I had £1 or $1 for every time I said to myself, I'm going to stay calm this time, I wouldn't need to make YouTube videos. It's not realistic. If you don't have a way to do it that works for you, it's not realistic. I won't get chances forever. I won't keep getting a chance to do the right thing. Again, the people around me, their patience isn't limitless. Your patience isn't limitless. That's why you're caught in this loop. You know, that's why it feels harder each time. This time, I'll make it work. Again, I was criminal for saying that to myself. I'll make it work. I almost feel like there should have been a separate version of me stood next to me just to go, okay, how? How are you going to make this work this time? Yeah? Talk me through your plan. But I didn't have that. Feeling like you can't afford to slip up. There's higher stakes. Every time you go round in this loop and round again, the people you care about are getting more fed up with it. Right, that's what it feels like, doesn't it? Because you're reacting more. When you've only reacted once, you might have just been having a bad day. When it's 20 or 50 times, there's a pattern emerging now, isn't there? You can see people are getting a bit fed up with it. You're always tense when you're trying again. Because now you're trying to present, right, as this calm person who, things don't get to this calm person, you know? Nothing upsets this calm person. Everything's good. You're living the dream. You try to make it look convincing, because if it's convincing to other people and it becomes that convincing lie, you can live inside of it more easily, because you just play up to what people think you already are. But underneath that, everything gets to you more than it's supposed to. It's weird in a way, isn't it? Because you know you can't react, especially not after the last time. So when something happens and it upsets you, it's not just, oh, that's kind of annoying, or that's really actually, I've had enough of that now. It's, but you can't react. Don't react, don't react, don't react, don't react. And that pressure to be calm makes everything slightly more difficult to hold. We're holding all that same weight, but it's being like on one of those moving plates in a gym. You're trying to hold it all and it's all sort of wobbling like this, and you don't really know what to do with it. And it gets to you more than it's supposed to. Because in your mind there are higher stakes. Because for a lot of people, how many times can you upset somebody before they don't want to be around you? How much time, how many more chances do you think you have? Again, most of us never even ask, like, are you getting fed up with me? Because that's a really hard question. One, it's a really hard question to ask. Two, can you imagine if you asked that question, they said, yes, I am getting fed up with you? What are you going to do with that? You're going to nosedive back into this loop, what you're going to do. That's what I'd have done. But that feeling creates anxiety. You're constantly on edge. It's like you're walking on eggshells every step you take, everywhere you go. And it's not living a full life, and it's not a nice way to be. But I said from the start of this video that I would offer you a first step, a way out of this loop. So now you've seen this loop clearly for exactly what it is, I want to offer you a first step. And the first step out of here, and no, this is not on any of these slides. You can go back through and pause the video and check them all over. It's not anywhere. Pause. Just pause. I don't know why I did that. But pausing is tremendously helpful. Because if you pause, right, I don't mean like just freeze where you are, but like go and take a minute. Yeah, and a lot of people will say that. Or go and take this time, go and take that time. You can find 1 minute. Yeah. Whether you're like going from work to home, home to work, whether you just drop the kids off to school, if you're like just, I don't know, going to do your teeth in the morning, whatever it might be, you can find even 30 seconds. Here's a fact, right, that I want to give you all now in a minute. And I'll actually put the numbers up on the screen for you. But there are 1,444 minutes in a day. If you can't find one, then it might be that the moments that you think you can't find are right under your nose and you've just never been using them properly because you've never seen the loop. And that's fine. I had moments hiding under my nose that I never saw properly. But when I took my first moment, I want to tell you about that because for me, it's not like a really moving, inspirational sort of story. It's messy and it's unorganized and it's uncoordinated and it's like the awkward first anything story. But I think it has power here because it gives people an expectation that like it doesn't have to be perfect. So when I first wanted to try and take some time for myself, I remember being stood in my kitchen. I was washing dishes, I'd just fallen out with like my partner or my kids or whatever it was. I remember being stood there being like, I need to get out of this for a minute. And you think like, how? How am I actually going to do that? And I spent a few days thinking about it in the back of my mind while I was still losing my temper, while I was still cutting myself off, still blaming myself, still pressing myself to change, to try harder next time, to get it right. I kept trying again. And in amongst all of that, in the back of my mind, it was like, how can I have 5 minutes to myself? Because it feels impossible. Because I don't have 5 minutes. And then eventually, one day, I was at home, and it was the weekend, right? I turned to my partner, and I lied. I said that I was going to make a phone call in a minute. I was going to step outside. I had no phone call to make. But I needed that moment so desperately that was what it came to. Now, I'm not suggesting, by the way, that you lied to get a moment. It was just desperation and no better plan. So anyway, I said that and I stepped outside. And I went and sat in my car and I listened to a song. And I want to say it was Bad Life by Sigrid and Bring Me the Horizon. I listened to that. And the song finished and there was just silence. And I just sat there for a minute. And if you have been through this loop enough times, silence is like a blessing. It certainly can be. Silence feels like a blessing sometimes. And I sat there in it and I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't feel stressed right now. I don't feel angry right now. I don't feel like upset or tense or anxious. And actually, when I realised that, I felt it properly. It felt like something I've been trying to find for years at that point. It felt better. I felt better. Just for a minute or two. But I felt it. And then it was like, well, now I want that again. Right. And I think a lot of people, we hear about like greed and we think it's wrong and we shouldn't encourage it. But actually, greed in this case is, I would encourage it, right? I would, because if you want something that's going to make you feel better, so that you're able to be better around other people and calmer for longer, more consistently, then I think you should absolutely be greedy about it, as long as it's not going to affect the people that you care about. But I tried taking more of these moments, and the more I took them, the more benefit I felt out of it. The easier it was getting for me. I would still snap. I would still lose my temper. But then I noticed the first time I didn't lose my temper, and I didn't have to try. That's the critical point. I didn't have to try and stay calm. I just was. Right? And I wasn't fixed. I wasn't cured. This isn't one of those things where you walk out of this loop and you never go back. I still fall into this now, because it is the easiest trap to fall into. And I still find myself in now. But this is what I've written it all out for, and why I put it on the screen for you guys today. And if any of you want a free version of this to take away with you, I'll make a PDF up and put it in the comments. If you want this, let me know. Right, okay, there's nothing right now, but I have all the materials for it, and I'll make a PDF and I'll link it in the comments as the pinned comment if you guys want it. Okay, I don't want to force it on you. That's why it's not there now. I don't want to force it on you. But if you want it, let me know. But I noticed I was calm when I wasn't having to try, because sometimes trying to stay calm is hard work. But I was just calm. And then I wanted more of that. It made sense to me. It was like, well, taking these pauses, these moments, I call them, help me to stay calm once. So let's keep taking these moments and see if it happens again. And then it did. And then it happened again and again. And I'm not saying like I'm calm all the time. If anybody tells you they're calm all the time, they're lying to you. Facts. I'm not calm all the time. I would love it if I was, but I'm not. But I do the best I can. And I have made this path out for myself because there wasn't one that existed that I could do. All of this, like, I'm not trying to be unkind or anything like that, but like this think yourself better stuff, it doesn't work for me. I think if you were able to just think yourself better, a lot of people's problems would get a hell of a lot easier very, very quickly. If you could just go, I've decided I'm going to be calm now, and then it just stuck. Imagine how easy that would be. But if you want to understand more about the moments idea that I've had and that I still use now, what are we now, 2.5 years on from the first moment, I still take them now because it still helps. Like I say, this isn't like you don't fix or cure yourself, because you're not. The reason you don't fix, the reason you never fixed and you're never cured is because you were never broken to begin with. You were just somebody carrying too much and not seeing the loop for what it was. Now, hopefully, you do. And if any of you have anything you want to ask or say or bring up, let me know in the comments, and I will more than happily reply to all the comments, okay? Anything that wants a reply doing, I will be there. But for now, I hope this has helped. And if you do want to get more information on the moments method that I use, let me know. I'll make it my next video, okay? But until the next one, just try and take a pause, see how you get on. This video is here if you need it. There's plenty more like it as well. Thanks for listening.